Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise in support of the bill, but I have some clarifications on the extent to which the bill might have an effect on artistic expression. I think many of us here today are agreed, and I certainly am of the view that every civilized society has some measure of censorship in it. It should not be the case that hate speech is allowed to run unchecked in society just because we want to adhere to some imagined or theoretical principle on freedom of speech. However, as it is the case with most things, the most extreme cases of racially harmful content are arguably the easiest ones to address. Where it is quite clear that offense has been caused and is intended, and maliciously phrased expressions and slurs are used, it is relatively easy for society to come together and band against these acts. The problem, however, lies in the grey areas where, for example, it is not immediately clear whether the acts in question are likely to incite enmity, hatred, ill will, or hostility against a particular race, or insult, vilify, denigrate, threaten, or abuse another race, as these terms are set out in clauses 8 and 40 of the bill. I appreciate that the government does not have an easy task. Overly strict measures could suppress future dialogue, while inaction might encourage irresponsible and harmful behaviour. This bill is a matter of particular concern to Singapore's arts community. Our arts and cultural groups have long been engaged in thoughtful, critical, and necessary conversations about identity, history, and race. These are voices that should be nurtured. If we truly believe in an inclusive and harmonious society, then we must also believe in the power of art, storytelling, and critical discourse to bring us closer together. The question of the extent to which the state should intervene in censorship of the arts is not a new one, and it's one that's been addressed by all the previous arts NMPs at one point or another. I too would like to add my voice to theirs in the context of the bill that we are debating today. First, I would like to ask if the Minister can provide some assurance to the arts community that the Presidential Council for Racial and Religious Harmony, or the Council, will be composed of some representatives from the literary, visual, performing, and musical arts sectors. At the moment, the schedule to the bill only refers to council members as being representatives of all major racial and religious communities and persons who have distinguished themselves in public service or community relations. The Council has very wide powers to review racial content restraining orders, or ROs, and it is heartening to see that the views of the Minister will be subject to some amount of independent oversight by the Council and the President. A common refrain amongst the arts community, and I too feel this way sometimes when dealing with bureaucracies, is that administrators with little interest in or knowledge of the arts may not have a good understanding of how artistic production takes place, why artists behave in the way that they do, what artists intend to achieve, and why the preservation of their voices is important. Artist representation on the Council is not only desirable, I would go so far as to say that it is essential to maintaining public confidence and providing assurance that this new proposed law both safeguards the space for artistic expression while protecting racial harmony. Secondly, in a related point, I would like to ask the Minister if the potentially offending acts or content in question are artistic works. Will the Council be open to consulting with specialists in the field when making its decisions? For instance, in cases where the contentious material is a painting, would the Council seek expert opinions from senior artists, art historians, and academics specializing in the visual arts? If the work in question is a literary piece, would the Council then engage with experienced publishers, authors, and editors to ensure a well-rounded and well-informed evaluation? Clause 33(5)(a) of the bill alludes to the Council having the power to invite any person to attend before it, and I believe that it would provide much assurance to the arts community if the Minister can confirm that specialist opinions will be obtained where artistic work and content is concerned. Thirdly, can the Minister clarify whether there will be opportunities for the deliberations of the Council to be made public, and if so, what the frequency of disclosure is expected to be? The schedule to the bill states that Council members and officers must keep meeting discussions confidential, except when sharing with the President, Cabinet, Minister, other Council members or officers, or if they are expressly authorized to make disclosures by the Minister. I would like to make the point here that it is important for the public to understand the basis for the Council's decision-making. One strength of this bill is that it acknowledges the complexity of racially motivated harmful acts. In introducing community remedial programs at Clause 41, it recognizes that the remedies for racial intolerance are not to be found only in criminal sanctions. Instead, we are better served as a community by ongoing initiatives that seek to rehabilitate and educate. In a similar spirit, if we regularly make the deliberations of the Council public, this could serve as a very powerful educational tool for the broader community. It would not only foster greater transparency, but also prompt deeper public engagement and feedback on the decisions that are made. This kind of input would offer authorities valuable insights into contemporary cultural standards, will help them to ensure that their decisions remain attuned to the evolving sentiments of Singaporeans. My fourth question is on whether the Ministry will be releasing examples of what constitutes harmful content that would potentially be subject to ROs under Clause 8 of the bill. Will we be seeing regulations which offer examples and guiding principles? ROs can be used to prohibit the communication or distribution of information and material. Now, the definition of information and material at Clause 8.8 appears to be wide enough to cover visual, literary, musical, and performance art works. Read in its entirety, these works can be removed from circulation altogether if the Minister is satisfied that the conditions in Clause 8.1 are met. I think that clear examples will be helpful to minimize subjective interpretation and assure the arts community that legitimate artistic works will not fall afoul of the law. Can the Minister also clarify how the phrase likely to commit in Clause 8.1 will be construed? ROs can be issued if the Minister is satisfied that a person is likely to commit offences. This is clearly a preemptive power and one that should be exercised very carefully. It should not be the case that artworks, books, or plays that critically examine racial issues could be banned or censored based on mere speculation. Could the Minister clarify whether specific guidelines will be used to determine when an artistic work might be regarded as information or material connected to acts that are likely to cause racial disharmony? My sixth and last question has to do with the interpretation of Clause 40 of the bill. Under this clause, an offence is committed if a person incites enmity, hatred, ill will, hostility, contempt, or ridicule against a racial group in Singapore. The offence applies if the person knows that their actions are likely to cause this effect. It is, however, a defence under Clause 8.6 if the accused person can show that he pointed out the offending matters in good faith and to bring about a removal of those matters. Looking at the strict wording of the bill, it seems possible that if an artist were to produce, say, a video work about racial tensions in Singapore's history, or if a theatre company stages a play on colonial era racial policies, that these works might be at risk of being deemed to incite feelings of ill will. Let me give you a more specific example. The late artist Lee Wen's Journey of a Yellow Man is a well-known performance art series in Singapore's art history. It's a work that's studied by art historians and it's taught to art students. It's part of the collection of the National Gallery Singapore, and it's also part of other prominent collections overseas. Lee Wen himself was awarded the Cultural Medallion in 2005. The work, if you have not seen it, involves the artist, Lee Wen, a man who is of Chinese ethnicity, covering himself with yellow paint and placing himself into deliberate encounters and situations all over the world. These are then photographed or filmed or sometimes witnessed by an audience. As explained by the Singapore Art Museum, the body of work is an exploration of identity and ethnic and cultural stereotypes. Now, if we apply Clause 41 to this body of work, it is possible to form the view that Lee, if he were alive today, might be considered as having knowingly ridiculed Chinese ethnicity. He would have accordingly committed an offence under Clause 41 when exhibiting his work. Could he then rely on the defence in Clause 46? Now, based on the wording of the bill, I believe it is not so clear. Art historians would certainly argue that the work was made in good faith, but can it be said to have been made or displayed in order to bring about a removal of the feelings of ridicule? Well, I would say yes on balance, but I would also mention that this message is not immediately apparent from the images that are presented in the body of work. Certainly, the works are Lee's expression of his frustration at being racially stereotyped when he was overseas, But can we say from simply looking at the work that there is a clear enough expression of a desire to bring about the removal of ridicule? I'm not sure that we can. Lee's own declarations may not necessarily shed light on the matter either. Here is an example of something Lee himself has said on the topic in a 1994 artist statement. He said, "I'm already yellow. Why do I still paint myself yellow? Yellow is the color of the sun, the color of the moon, the color of the river that runs in the old country. It is the spirit of nobility, the glow of precious gold, the warmth and abundance of harvest, the power and faith in temples. In a different sense, yellow can also be the color of dangerous hazards, confidential secrets, pornography, and vices. It is also the color of the persecuted and the oppressed." So as you can see, in the realm of art, messaging is often nuanced, layered, and open to interpretation. Audiences are invited to engage critically and to interpret works in their own way. This is what art is all about and why it is so powerful and why we value it. Last year, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong committed an additional $100 million of funding to support the arts in recognition of this value that it has in our society. In the context of this bill, however, the element of audience interpretation can make it challenging for an artist to definitively prove that their work is intended as a call for change, rather than being misinterpreted as an endorsement of the very issues that the work seeks to critique. This ambiguity may then make it very hard for artists to rely on the defense which is provided at Clause 46 of the bill. Many artistic works critically examine race, social injustice, and history. These should not be viewed at the get-go as acts of hostility, but rather as efforts to foster deeper understanding. Australia's Racial Hatred Act, introduced in October 1995, for example, provides a defense where a person's conduct was done reasonably and in good faith in the performance, exhibition, or distribution of an artistic work. The proposed bill today does not go as far as that. We do not have a blanket exemption or protection for artistic works, but we must protect our ability to discuss and reflect on history without fear of heightened state intervention. In this regard, some guidance on the interpretation of Clause 46 will be very helpful. I know it is not possible for the Ministry to provide an exhaustive list of guidelines on this point, but I hope that the Minister can assure us that the terms good faith and bringing about the removal of those matters, as these phrases are set out in Clause 46, that these phrases will be broadly interpreted. Racial harmony is indeed the cornerstone of our society, but true harmony is achieved through open and meaningful dialogue. Our artists play a very important role in facilitating this. It is essential to strike a balance between preventing harmful content and allowing the arts to thrive as a platform for meaningful discourse. Sir, I understand the Minister's explanation earlier that a number of the bill's provisions actually port over and consolidate existing laws. But given that we have a new proposed bill to consider, I think it is also a good opportunity to relook some of the issues as they have been presented before the House today.